Pottery. The Shelley family had produced their pottery in Stoke-on-Trent since the 1860s. But World War II was a disastrous time for small potteries. Only utility white china was allowed to be produced. And then, with an increase in mechanisation, the family were eventually forced to merge with another firm in the late 1960s. And because, of course, it's no longer produced, their pottery has now become a popular collector's item. Well, William Harvey, who is co-author of a book about the Shelley family, is here with part of a collection of the pottery, which in its heyday in the 30s was very renowned for its bold design and very bright colours. Obviously, you're very fascinated by the Shelley, but why was it so successful, in fact?
It was so successful because of its, well, the way they used colour, its style, probably mainly because of the art directors that they used.
Yes, they had some amazing men, didn't they? But what people may not realise is that behind us we've got some very, very early Shelley.
Yes, people won't recognise this as being Shelley because it was made under the name of Wildman and Company. That's the name Shelley traded under in the very beginning. And this is a range of pottery called intarsia.
Do we know why it's called that?
No, we don't, oddly enough.
So what's the technique, then, of intarsia?
The way in which the pottery is decorated is an outline is drawn on the body, first of all, and then it's infilled with colour and then glazed over that, giving this very shiny surface.
This is an umbrella stand,
That's an umbrella stand, yes.
Are the actual decorations on this significant of any style?
Yes, they are. I mean, these could be typically, these typically suggest Art Nouveau. You can see the ladies, which are a very common feature of that period, and lilies, and the way flowers were drawn, long, sinuous shapes. That was very much of the period.
Yes, this is in fact a clock, isn't it?
Yes, that's a clock.
Which is it. Were they very popular then, this sort of thing?
Yes, they were popular, but don't forget that it was still a small pottery, so there wouldn't be a great deal of it.
Mm. And what about, I mean, would it be expensive to buy, perhaps, at that time?
Moderately expensive, yes, because of the work involved. Although labour was cheap then, some of these pieces are very highly decorated and they involve quite a lot of work.
And curious work, for here we've got teapots. Now,
yes.
Can you tell me about those?
Yes, two-character teapots. I mean, this one here is of Lord Salisbury. His face is the lid. And this one is Chamberlain, and again, his face lifts off. It's rather difficult to do that, but it does.
Mm. And we see his little face. It's amazing how politicians are always taken up by potters, isn't it? Yeah. So, and would they be of quite a great value at the time?
No, they would have been. They wouldn't have been terribly expensive. The decoration is basically very simple. People would have bought them because they were amusing, and that's really how we see them now.
Are they pretty rare, though?
Yes, they are rare. You won't see many of them. I think possibly because the lids are so vulnerable. It would break very easily.
Now, this is a later, well, a later version of the same style, right?
Yes. This is also intarsia. It's the second series, designed by another art director, not Frederick Reed, who designed this earlier stuff, but by his successor, Walter Slater.
How can you actually tell that that's a different
It's not terribly easy. The best way probably is to notice that the shapes are rather simpler. They're less elaborate. You can see these elaborate handles on these. But with this one, the decorations are more abstract. Less use of floral decoration.
Well, this early period, of course, is earthenware. But what Shelley actually built its reputation on, and what most people think of, is the very fine bone china, and indeed Shelley's china was very fine, wasn't it?
Indeed it was, yes, very fine indeed.
Now, what's the difference then between bone china and earthenware?
Bone china is translucent. In fact, if you hold it up to the light, you can see through it. You can see the shadow of your fingers if you hold it up to the light, whereas earthenware is completely opaque. It lets no light through whatsoever. Bone china is also lighter. Earthenware is rather heavy.
Was there anything, I mean, basically different in the ingredients as well?
Yes, bone was added to the mix, and that's what makes it translucent.
Now, this particular tea set is what?
This is called the Queen Anne design, which was designed by Frederick Reed's successor, Walter Slater, and first introduced in 1926.
And what are the characteristics about this? Because it's gone on for years.
Yes, it was produced for quite a long time because it was so popular. It's basically octagonal in shape. You can see the cup there. And the teapot is also octagonal.
Absolutely marvellous. But during the war, of course, all the potteries had quite a difficult time, didn't they?
They did, yes. They were only allowed to sell utility wares during the war. Anything that was decorated was for export only.
So that would be exported, but what would they be producing here at home?
Throughout, they would have produced, I think, about 80% of the factory's output during the war was exported, leaving 20% to be sold
and only
at
very
home.
plain...
And only very plain white utility wear.
Right. But one of the things which I find fascinating, which helped them through many a depression, was children's wear.
Yes. Shelley's had always done nursery wear at the turn of the century even. But in 1926 they commissioned Mabel Lucy Atwell, who was a popular nursery story writer, to do some designs for them.
And this is what, a tea set here?
This is a tea set. You've got a teapot in the shape of a toadstool with a toadstool sugar bowl, and a milk jug, which is a boo-boo, one of the Mabel Lucy Atwell characters.
He was the most crucial one, though, wasn't he?
Yes, the boo-boos appeared on most of the Mabel Lucy Atwell wear. You can see them in this plate here, knocking on the door of that house.
And in fact on here as
well.
well.
Yes, and parachuting out of an aeroplane.
And they were all very, very popular at the time, were they?
Yes, they were. They were popular characters.
Now, what about these characters here? Because they sold well as well.
Yes, they were rather cute. This one was called Didlums. You can see him here with his low-cut back. And this one here is, of course, I'm Going Tartar.
And my favourite.
The golfer.
The golfer.
Yes,
You can even see his little
yes, he's rather cute.
Sort of golf clubs, yes. Marvellous. But I think that the thing that's most striking about Shelley pottery, and much sought after, was this particular group. What is it called?
This is the Vogue china, which was introduced in 1930, designed by Eric Slater, the previous art director's son. And you can see the very sharp geometric lines to all of it.
And very, very different at that time. What was the reaction to it?
It was extreme, but the reason that Shelley decided to produce something so extreme was they thought, well, times are bad, we'll take a risk and see how it goes.
And what was the reaction to it from the public?
It was pretty way out. It wasn't terribly popular at the time. I mean, it was quite expensive too, so you needed to...
But can you show me on the sort of designs themselves, for example?
Yes, they did have some opposition to the shape of cup. The wide-rimmed early version, which we see here, allowed the liquid, the tea, to cool very quickly, and so it was modified to a taller, narrower cup. And even after that, there were, because of some opposition to the solid triangular handle, there you could grip it because it was indented. Some people felt they needed a more conventional handle, so they changed it to this one, where you've got the open triangular handle.
Are we likely to find any of this in our cupboards, or is it indeed very rare?
Yes, it's still around. Yes.
And then, of course, this was the next progression from that.
Yes, and this was called the Regent shape, designed in 1933, again by Eric Slater. A very nice shape to use. He moves away from the straight lines to more curved forms. We can see the cup here is...
Yes, and the handles.
And the handles are circular.
Put your handles in.
Yes, you certainly get your fingers through there, so maybe that's why he did them.
And then finally, you've got an accidental thing there, right?
Yes, Eric Slater was experimenting in decorating some pottery on a wheel, and he'd mixed the glazes rather too thinly, and they ran, and he thought, well, this looks rather interesting, perhaps we can produce it. So some were made and sent off to the nearest town, and they sold like hot cakes.
And they were very aware of selling things like hot cakes, because they were very aware of advertising, weren't they? And finally, to finish our little exhibition, you're going to tell me about their Shelley Girl.
Yes, they commissioned an advertising agent to run an advertising campaign for them, which featured the Shelley Girl, which we see here. It was also featured in advertisements, in magazines, These figures were shown in shop windows.
And there were, in fact, Shelley girls who walked around to
Yes,
talk about pottery?
the Shelley girls would visit department stores dressed in paisley dresses and fox furs and sell the china.
Now, you've actually produced a book to
Yes.
go with the exhibition,
Yes.
and it's called Shelley Potteries, but you are, in fact, co-author.
Yes, I'm only one of the authors. Chris Watkins and Robert Semp are my co-authors on this project.
And it's, in fact, quite an expensive book.
It's £15.
Is it for serious collectors, mainly?
For serious collectors, yes. It's nicely illustrated. We have over 100 illustrations, a lot of them in colour.
Thank you, William Harvey. Well, for those of you who would like to see the exhibition, it is currently on show at the Jeffrey Museum, Shoreditch in London until the 25th of January. After that, it goes to the City and Art Gallery Museum in Stoke-on-Trent from the 31st of January until the 28th of March. Then it goes to the Bristol City Museum and Art Gallery from the 5th of June until the 2nd of August. And finally, to Huntley House Museum in Edinburgh from the 18th of September until the 21st of November. But remember, if any of you have any Shelley china hidden in your cupboards, don't give it away to the dustbin. It may well be worth quite a lot.